Al's not here tonight, everybody. So, um, you know, it's good to be here, Cypher Unlimited. So you have two of the usual suspects in Spigs 18 and me, Alpha Dean, AD, whatever you want to call me. At any rate, Anthony, what are we doing tonight?
First off, I love that intro. That was awesome. And second of all, we had Sean K. Reynolds on last week to talk about Monte Cook Games' newest horror supplement, Stay Alive. So this week, we're gonna actually do a review and walkthrough of Stay Alive. And the book is broken into two major parts. Part one, which is horror world building, and then part two is the setting. But we'll start off with part one, horror world building.
Awesome.
The first, I was gonna say, the first chapter is horror can be anything and anywhere. You want to go over that chapter, Dean?
Yeah, I mean, it literally that's the full summation. But what it does is it kind of breaks down that ideology. It talks about, you know, weddings are joyous occasions, except if the bride is a vampire. Balloons are fun unless the person giving them is a monstrous clown. So basically what it's doing is it's setting the stage where you can give you an understanding that you can put a horror twist or flavor on just about anything. And then it goes into defining the various genres of horror. So I think that in of itself, when we talk about this being a toolkit, it's huge because it breaks everything down into varying varying genres as well as um, blocks that you can work from. So
Yeah.
we can go from aliens all the way to zombies, and everything in between.
What I really like about this chapter, it's no more than 5 or 6 pages, but it gives you over 30 different little quick paragraph genre descriptions. But what I really like, it actually gives you examples of each genre. So like say I just pulled one, science gone wrong. It gives you a quick little definition, and then it'll show you the island of Dr. Monroe, scanners, Stranger Things. So if off the top of your head, you couldn't immediately grasp what the genre is, it's going to give you some examples so you could go, oh, okay, I understand what that is. And I thought that was really smart.
Right. Absolutely. Um, I just dig it. I think, I can't say enough praises about this book. I mean, I'm I didn't even realize I was looking forward to this book. Like, Anthony was like, this is his book. I've been, stoked about God Forsaken, but man, I can't say enough great things about
But
Stay
let,
Alive.
let's save our opinion for the end, because like, then we don't have a video.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to. I don't think we should beat a dead horse. I mean,
So what's chapter two, B?
horror can be anything. No, I'm sorry. Building your horror setting. This is a great chapter because it basically um, it basically gives you the tool. A lot of little tools, a lot of little charts and things like that, and guidelines. So using published settings, borrowing from other sources, um, you know, and then it tells you to ask the 5W questions. Basically who, what, when, where, why.
I really like the 5W questions, especially for the horror genre, because it helps you flesh out, your overall narrative. With most like other settings, you don't necessarily have to answer those because the players could, could answer those questions in gameplay. But when you have a horror game, you need to know why this tragic thing is happening or this horrific thing is happening. You kind of need to know that beforehand, and you need to know why it's happening. When did it start? Because it's actually better if, as the GM, you're aware of, the overall narrative scope, if that makes any sense,
Well, let's
before the
put
game starts.
let's put those questions in perspective, because I just said the who, what, but it's who is responsible for the horror?
Yeah.
What is the horror? When did the horror begin? Where is the horror happening, and why is the horror happening? So when you take those and you really use them, I like, how he gives you the example of how the exorcist works, where, who's responsible for horror? That's the demon that possesses Reagan. You know,
Mm.
what is the horror? The child being possessed. When did the horror begin? A few weeks ago. Where is the horror happening? In the child's home in Georgetown. And why is the horror happening? Because demons enjoy the corruption of people, which is cool. But then in like right in this on the same page in the sidebar, he talks about tweaking an established idea so you can use it or make it your own. So it's just not a repackaged or recycled story from somebody else. So the same concept would be with the Exorcist. It's that perhaps Reagan was using a Ouija board early in The Exorcist and made her a target for the demon, but that's not clear. So we don't know. But these are things that you can add in to tweak your story. So I
I
think
think
that's awesome.
I think Sean did a great job in explaining how the narrative of a horror game works, especially for a novice GM. He goes step by step and slowly explains his thought process, which I greatly appreciate in this book. And throughout the whole first chapter, it's him explaining and doubling down on the explanations, which is this is great.
And excuse me, everyone, I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold issue. So if I cough, I'm really not trying to blow
It,
your ears
it,
out or anything. I do apologize.
it fits the horror setting. You,
Maybe.
you got the cooties.
Yeah. And I had made mention in this chapter about the tables. They call it the horror inspiration table. I think is brilliant.
it,
Um,
it basically answers all those 5 questions on tables, correct? You could answer
Basically, yeah.
you could
You
you
know,
could answer all 5 questions just by rolling randomly in the table. And us GM roulette guys, we appreciate the randomness,
well,
the improv. So this is right up our alley.
what I appreciate about it, to be honest with you, I actually used this last week at my Cipher system demos at Dragon Snack, and I'm probably going to use it again this week. And it's pretty cool because um, I've actually been able to tweak it to just use it, for genre, building in general, as opposed to just horror. So it's really pretty cool.
For shits and giggles, you want to roll on this table right quick? You got 2d10s or a d100 nearby? All right. All right, so first roll on the base setting
So our base setting
so we can
today,
show you how easy it is
and
to
this, yeah,
get a game
we're
going.
basically going to just craft a real quick horror, one shot that we would run, for a demo or whatever. So the base setting today is an 11.
So an 11 would be modern.
All right.
And the horror source, this is what our big bad is.
Where am I? We got a 46.
46 would be a ghost, a modern ghost story. And
All right.
this is our what ifs, the speculation. This is, like maybe a subplot to the story that could, add some interesting dilemmas into the narrative.
Or they're also kind of like the person that is bringing the story to you, if you need, a help with that. So that we get a 81.
81 would be Unreliable Narrator.
Now, I like that one. I think that one's pretty awesome because with the Unreliable Narrator, the way Sean describes it is that it's the crazy person or the person whose credibility isn't the best. So they're telling you something, and it could absolutely all be true, or could absolutely all be a lie, or they could actually be the antagonist themselves.
That's a technique that John Carpenter, Steven Spielberg used a lot in the early movies. Remember the crazy guy in Jaws? The end of the world is near.
Yep.
But wasn't the end of the world. It was a killer shark, but it was sort of like giving you the misdirection. Like, okay, is this guy involved in the story, even though he has nothing to do with it? But
Right.
it's very it adds a new element to the story. And these are evocative horror adjectives, and you could use these to explain.
So let's see.
Let's say let's roll this 3 times.
Roll it 3 times. All right.
Yeah.
So the first one is a 85.
Damn, you rolling high. Shadowy. That makes sense with ghosts.
The next one is a 6.
I jinxed you. That is baleful.
Oh, that's awesome. See, I like those already. And the last one is 40.
Formidable. A baleful, formidable, shadowy. He also gives the definition of the words too, if you don't know what they mean.
Right. And for me, that just is awesome, because what that puts me in the mind of, baleful automatically puts me in the mind of a banshee of some sort. Then shadowy, because if you know anything about Celtic mythology and stuff like this, the She were, another name for the elves, and the elves were, they always were on the edge of reality, and then formidable, of course, that could be definitely a formidable opponent for you to have to deal with, contend with,
And the unreliable narrator could be a fake magician or a fortune teller that's really a fraud.
Dude, look at that. That would be a great little adventure to run. And it took us longer because we were discussing it than it does to actually roll it up. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think this chapter is really brilliant, And what I dig about it is he even gives you techniques and ideas after you roll on a chart. It says let it percolate and ruminate for a while. So you write down those ideas and watch a film or read a book or read a comic book or something to inspire those ideas even more so.
He also explains basically the process we just did now, but a little more in depth.
Correct.
Yeah.
You
ready to move on to chapter 3? Even though that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, chapter 3, consent and horror. Now we did a whole video about this, but it does bear repeating. I think it is important. A lot of people may not think it's the most important thing, but just like I'm talking about, running these games for demos and stuff like that. I don't know the people at my table, who are coming in to learn Cipher system, and they might want to play a horror game. Maybe they've never played one before. So, you really need to know what parameters you're working within, before you sit down and run a horror game, because horror games can be a lot.
First and foremost, I think consent is essential in any horror game or horror genre. I think there's a reason why when they were writing this book, Sean and Shauna started working on consent, because I think this is the one genre that absolutely needs it. Because when you mention horror to 10 people, they're going to give you 10 different examples of what they deem horror is. And some people might, take it a little bit, left of Albuquerque, a little way out there. And, it might make other players uncomfortable. So I'm 100% in agreement with you, Dean, that, the consent document is something you definitely should use, not only with Stay Alive, but with the horror genre in particular.
Oh, yeah, horror genre in particular. And, it's kind of funny, and I'm just going to bring it up, but we'll be getting to that too. There was a big blurb today that We Are All Mad Here is coming out. And there's going to need to be consent with that as well, because it's going to deal with mental illness, and these are things that I don't think people look at. We're in such a great time when it comes to gaming, but everything is so expansive now, and it's not like it was, 30 years ago or 40 years ago when we started, when it was just a niche group. Everybody who was playing knew each other, and you know, you weren't going to conventions and you weren't going to game stores and running, you know, demos and stuff like that. Everybody played the same game for that matter. So
Yeah, like Dean said earlier, we did a video on consent in gaming, and you guys could watch that video. But you know, you basically know what our opinions are. We mentioned it in multiple videos. So let's move on to chapter 4: horror plots, how and why. This is an absolutely phenomenal chapter. You know, not only does it give you multiple different plot samples, it sparks your imagination. It gives you well over 50 different plot hooks that you can run your game. So you could even basically just roll this out if you didn't want to think of a plot hook to run your own game. You know, I'll pick one at random. Objects and people from twisted parallel reality start to bleed into our own. Then things from our dimensions begin to disappear. Look, that works perfectly with our Banshee story.
mm-hmm. Because
And
they're no,
I
go
just
ahead.
I just pulled it out randomly. And you see how they all fit and interconnect with each other. Now, you know, we could even start we came up with this idea of this, you know, some sort of fake prophet or fake fortune teller. And the town, we could start a game in a small town, and he comes to this town and stuff starts disappearing, and everyone blames him. And he says that there's this banshee on the loose, which he made up, but in all actuality, it really is some sort of like a demonic spirit that's, you know, has come to this town.
Or you could even take it a step further, that he's basically being played by the baleful spirit, that the spirit is using him to make him look, to discredit him. So he's really the only one who sees it. Like he can actually see the creature, doing the things that it's doing, but it always puts the blame on him.
Oh yeah, and and it's physically stealing stuff. So
Right.
when the PCs break into his van, right now he has a van. When they break into the van, they find all the stolen stuff.
Exactly. you know but and then you can leave other kind of clues to make it realize, that there's something else going on. Maybe he found, maybe, he is a bit of a charlatan, known for, going around stealing from everybody, but in one sense, he may be really a conduit. So there's so many ways you can play it, you know that will bring it full circle, and this chapter builds on that so beautifully. It gives you the tools once again to start sparking that imagination.
He
So
he he also breaks down in the simplest terms, you know, why it's important to have a good foundation plot and how to involve the NPCs in your plot. And
right.
like I said earlier, I can't stress this enough. He breaks it down in the simplest of terms, so even the newest of GMs could understand how to run a horror game, which is absolutely excellent.
And real quick, I like to add, something that I don't know if a lot of people use it, but one thing that this book does, it has a lot of anecdotal information in the sidebars. That information is invaluable because he makes references to films, memorable moments in movies, and they're just so fitting to the chapter, and it's ways to do things. So I love it. I actually love that.
And
Um,
just so we could touch on it, but the artwork of this book is spectacular as well. Every time I'm looking through the PDF as we're talking, and I keep on getting my eyes fixated on the image, and I'm like, oh man, this is so cool. But I gotta scroll up because we gotta keep the conversation going. So
yeah, the imagery does actually, the imagery is very evocative as well. You know,
yeah, absolutely enhances the document, enhances the book.
right? You know.
And
So
now, oh, go ahead, Dean.
I was just gonna say, if we don't have anything else, we're gonna move on to the next chapter.
Yep.
So the next chapter is advice for running a horror game. Um, you know, this chapter is a collection of advice for players and GMs, alike. Um, some of the stuff in the margins, is more for the GM, so it can be spoilerish for the player. So if you don't plan on being a GM, kind of avoid that part if you read this chapter. But the information, again, like I said, I don't know how many times you can tell you how good this book is. I've read this book like 3 times. It's crazy. I haven't read a splat book like this in years. So
I mean, this chapter breaks down pretty much how to run a horror game, and it breaks down like the key elements you need when running a horror game. It talks about mood and pace. It talks about how to create the mood,
tension.
the mood you're looking for. It talks about how to spark an emotional feeling and connection in between the NPCs and the PCs to help develop, help move the story forward, and to create that tension, like you said. Right. It also gives you the highs and lows of narrative tension. It explains why you shouldn't go 100 miles a minute and have like horrible things happening one after another. You need those lows. You need those breaks in the game where the PCs can interact with each other and feel safe. Because then when you do bring the hammer down, the tension rises immediately. It's just chock full of great advice. And
And it even talks about one of my favorite is misdirection.
mm,
You know, Misdirecting the pensive moments. Where you know there's a sound in the darkness. And there's crash over here, and then it's just Johnny walking out. And
mm.
then you turn around and you could do something like Johnny standing there talking. And
It also gives advice on adding horror to non-existing horror games. So this book is useful even if you don't plan to run a horror game. Say you wanna add some horror elements to your Stars of Fire game or to your Gods of the Fall game. It gives you advice on how to add that little one-shot adventure that has horror elements into it, which is great. Right? It shows you it deals with death in a horror game, how to handle it. How does the game stop because one or two characters die? Of course not. It gives you advice on how to handle that as well. How to get it gives you ways to keep players involved in the game even though their PCs die, which is also awesome.
and the one for me is the show don't tell, because they put clarification on techniques that I've used over the years, but just never quantified them. And the show don't tell is really cool because, for example, if you were to tell the players the more at night looks spooky, why do that? Whereas in a horror game, you want to show it. So you can say the mist slowly rolls its way across the moor, mysterious lights flicker within like the eyes of strange beasts. So, boom, you just engaged the theater of the mind, and and we'll scare ourselves more than anybody else. So it's all in how you use that. So I really dug that portion of this chapter. you know
Yeah, I mean, I think chapter 5 and chapter 6 go hand in hand, and they probably the two most important of part one of the horror world building. Oh, actually, 5, 6, and 7 are the three most important. But the advice for running horror games is excellent. You should read that, especially if you're not used to running high tension, high horror style games. It's chock full of great advice, and we don't want to. We want you to buy the books, and we don't want to go over everything in there. But it's a great toolkit to show you how to run a horror game.
right. and
But
and there's something else in here that's really a very strong point, and that's about the horror fatigue. I think that was a brilliant spot too, because it talks about most horror games being one shots. Short story arcs would take a few sections to complete, as opposed to a long campaign. Um, and honestly, I kind of agree with that because people will call Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or Angel, or Grimm. They call those horror TV shows, and I say those are action adventures with horror elements. As opposed to a full-on horror, because if I'm going to do horror, kind of the plot or the idea is to scare you. You know what I'm saying? To evoke and invoke a certain emotion.
The
Whereas,
best, I would say, the best horror TV shows are, you know, like Chiller, the ones that are Twilight Zone. They one shot
right,
stories.
they're episodic. They're
Yeah,
episodic in and of themselves. It's not an ongoing
Tales
story.
from the Crypt.
Right. And
So
so,
I absolutely agree with you.
so just so you understand, so I mean, now you Anthony just gave me an idea. Now that should be something we do. We should do, uh, a horror cipher system series where it's nothing but episodes. We come on. You want to play this horror? Anthony runs one, I'll run one. It'll be awesome.
You remember
Yeah.
Dark Shadows?
Love Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, so let's move on to my favorite chapter in the book, horror genres. This is probably the longest chapter where they break down over 31 different genres and they give you a 2-page spread on each genre with not only does it break down each horror type, but it gives you examples of how to run it. It gives you what horror rules to use. Why is it scary? What are the risks involved with running one of these genres? And it goes the entire gambit of the horror.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna click real fast, Rand, and we're gonna stop. Whichever one I stop on is the one we're gonna talk about. We'll break it down like that. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, tell me when to stop.
Stop.
All right. So what do we have here? We have J horror and K horror.
Oh,
So
very interesting.
Japanese horror and Korean horror. Specific genres that sell many common themes. If you watch movies like Ju-on and Ringu and stuff like that, which eventually got a Americanized version, of course. This stuff is like not the same as typical horror films that are filmed here in the U.S. or
You,
European horror.
you know what's hilarious? Okay, now we had our Banshee story. Now we can make it a modern Japanese horror. And Japanese horror deals with ghosts and spirits. That's one of the main elements of Japanese horror.
Right.
So we can use this chapter to continue to flesh out our one shot that we rolled randomly in the beginning of the book.
So we can and look at this. Here we go. So if you were to take that same concept, because we like if you watched The Grudge, which was Ju-on, they said that was anger and rage and something that's captured, and that was the horror, that was the source of it. So we have a baleful spirit. So what if we have a person who, or this is a nexus of a place where it's shattered dreams.
Oh, one step further to tie in all the story. Our fortune teller is a Korean transfer, came to the States, comes to the small town of the States, and the NPCs find this Korean or Japanese spell book in his possession.
Right. And they have to try to translate it, only to find out.
Exactly, no one in the group speaks Korean or Japanese.
Right. And then you find out that this isn't even a normal form or a normal dialect. This is an ancient dialect that's no longer used.
Yeah.
I mean, if no, this is kanji as opposed to the typical written language or something. So it's like so many absolute things that you could do.
And it's not only there, like I said, there's so many genres he deals with. And I know one of the criticisms that we've seen on Reddit and Facebook is that they're not that he's only took 2 pages and he didn't deal with the, like he could have put more information on the big, famous monsters, the lycanthropes, the werewolves, but to be honest, there's a ton of information out on, the popular monsters and popular horror genres. I really appreciate that he does things like creepy kids and Japanese horror, degenerates. Like the genres that doesn't receive as much love as the most popular ones. Doppelgangers. Like, come on, ghosts, werewolves, vampires. There's a ton of information you can find on those things. But
And, and,
Killer
and,
Toys, come on, he has 2 pages on Killer Toys.
and here's something else that I think people
Cthulhu.
I think people should, kind of should, I talk about it all the time. It's my favorite thing to talk about is a paradigm shift. But when you look at Monte Cook Games, when you look at Cipher system in general, Cipher system is a universal system. It's a system used to inspire, not give you everything that you need. So I think we should embrace that more. That conceptualization of we're learning to grow as storytellers. We put our own slant, we put our own twist on it. I don't need the annals of Pharaoh, or whatever to tell these stories because I'm telling the story. Me and my players. So I kind of dig that aspect too, that it's not everything.
Also, too, it's not like realistically, it's not the werewolf book. It's not the vampire book.
Right.
It's not the zombie book. It's the stay alive. It's every horror genre. So I would feel a little, to be honest, I would feel the opposite. I would feel cheated if he just picked like 5 or 6 genres and gave me 10 pages on each genre. I prefer what's actually in the book.
Absolutely. I agree.
I prefer the openness, of like, let me do the work. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Come on, you got slashers in here, survival horror. And then of course, he does werewolves, vampires, he does zombies, he does the ones that everyone else does.
What I
But
think is
he has a
like
wide
mummy,
variety. Yeah.
taking mummies to a whole nother level. It's such a good, it really is such a full, useful book. And this section is the biggest section because he does touch on them just enough to give you exactly what you need to build whatever type of game you want to run.
And like I said, it's well over 30. I think it's 33 different genres. And not only like for each genre he picks, it's 2 pages, but there's a lot of information in these 2 pages. He gives you intrusion examples. He gives you pretty much plot hooks. There's so much in those 2 pages.
Right. Absolutely. And so if you have nothing else, Anthony, we get to move on to my favorite section. This is my favorite section. What I really dug about it was it just put labels on stuff that, over the years I've been doing as a GM. I know Anthony has done it as a GM, and we never had labels for. We never even thought of it as a mechanic. This was just something we used, and as Sean calls them, horror modules. I think this is just so cool because it works especially for the horror, but you could apply these to other genres if you wanted. Like the first, the first one is the bad penny. An unwanted dangerous object, cursed artifact, whatever. It just keeps turning up no matter how you try to get rid of it. So this could be your plot hook, like we were talking about our our horror story with the baleful spirit. Well, what if the baleful spirit is connected to, let's just say the unreliable source is connected to his clothing? Perhaps he has his father's suit. It's the only suit he has, and the baleful spirit is connected to that. Or there's a pendant or something like that. So you can just build on that. So it's like every chapter adds another element that brings a cohesive whole to your improvised story. I couldn't talk there for a minute.
Yes, some of them are themes that long running themes that affects all the PCs in the game, and it adds a new element to your storytelling, which is awesome. Some of them are straight mechanics, like like the madness mechanic, like the horror rules. But everything in here adds a new element and adds excitement to your game. And who doesn't like excitement in their games? one of my favorite ones, hands down, is the poor choices mechanic. It's a new form of GM intrusion, which allows the GM to force you to make a bad decision, like most horror movies do. And like how Sean explained it in the video, last week's video, everyone's seen that horror movie where, you know, the two characters know that it doesn't make sense to hide in the house when the slasher killer's around, but yet they still do. And with this, it allows the GM to at least force a bad decision and give the GM awards 2 XP and makes you do something that's suboptimal to your character, but makes total sense in the narrative of the story.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it.
that is a pretty cool mechanic.
Yeah. And it also gives you a whole page of intrusion examples for poor choices, which is awesome.
And you know, the hysteria and instant panic are pretty cool too. You know,
Yeah.
they basically they put you in a position where, you know, your character kind of has to, you know, you're not that cool cucumber. You know, it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like awesome.
Yeah. And this is also like almost 20 something new mechanics or new inspirations you can use in your game, or he calls them modules you can use for your game. And you don't have to use all of them. You can use one, you can use two, you can use all, you can use none. It's totally up to the GM and the players to decide what they want to use. You know, they're all optional rules, which is awesome. You know, that's the whole modular nature of Cypher system to begin with.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. You know, it's there's the one that I kind of like too, the Perilous Venture. It's kind of a take on the task resolution rules that we've talked. You know, where multiple things have to be done or something has to be done. You know, on in stages in order for you to, you know, stop the big bad. It's just really cool the way things are organized and given to you. So it's like, um, you know, do I use this or do I use that? You know, but it gives you the flexibility to continue to make your own unique story.
Another one I think we should touch on before we move on, which I think is one of the like more cool and entertaining ones, is the ghostly helpers. Is when a PC dies, it allows the player to play as a ghost and help the other players and still do actions to stay in the game until they have time to roll up a new character or have time to jump back in as another NPC. I mean, as another PC. You know, it's another really cool one. I mean, this is a I absolutely love this chapter. There's just so much stuff, and you don't need to run a hard game to use some of these, or you could tweak them slightly to make sense for whatever game you're running. Because I could see Ghostly Helper in a Toon game very easily.
Oh yeah, or I could see, you know, using that as a, you know, a superhero game. What if you, or a sci-fi game? What if you got an AI system? You know,
Yep.
make a player person AI, or if you're running something that has, you know, people going into virtual reality. So many different approaches that you can use these things with.
Hey, we could do a Cheech and Chong game and use poor choices. That would be hilarious.
I don't know if that's going to be stream friendly though.
I know I'll be with that game.
Yeah.
All
Oh
right,
man.
you want to move on to the next one?
All right. So our next chapter is chapter 8, Cipher Shorts, and basically what Sean did with this was give us 3 cipher shorts that could literally be strung together to lead you into something, or you know, they could be used as just standalones. So everybody know I did use Camp Myrtle Hoboken, Killer on the Loose. I used that in a demo this past
That,
week.
that's basically a Friday the 13th style game. You
Yeah.
know, Killer on the Loose.
You know, and it's kind of funny because there's a show that comes on, I forgot what it called, Practical Jokes or something, with the kid from Stranger Things. It's on Netflix. and he did something like that. So it's kind of cool that I was able to, use that and then combine it. It was pretty cool. The Cipher shorts are awesome. The whole concept of it, the way the characters are built,
The, the,
because the characters are not built with the same full sentence like we're looking at. You're just looking at, you know, um, an athlete, troublemaker, counselor, nerds. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of gives you those things to work around. So your athlete will be a physical character. He's going to be a physical type person. The counselor is going to be a talky type person. The nerd is going to be the intellectual type person. So it's like pretty cool that they kind of take the onus off of trying to figure out what type and actually being a type. You're just a person.
I mean, it's like what they are. They're designed to be picked up and played. Like, you basically need 15 to 20 minutes prep time. And if you want to run a game, bam, just pick up this book. Read the first 5 or 6 pages of the Cipher short. You basically have your characters set for you, and you off and running in 20 minutes. The
Right.
the next adventure is the Banda House. Is basically an Amityville, a haunted house style adventure. Amityville, Poltergeist. Those would be examples of. And the last one is a Valiant County Hospital, and that's zombie outbreak. That's Walking Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead
Right.
style game. And they all like we said earlier, they all designed to be quickly picked up and played. And if you want to run a horror game but don't feel confident in your abilities to write your own adventure just yet, it's just perfect. Just grab one of these Cipher shorts, read it once or twice, and get the ball rolling. Start rolling those funny shaped dice.
Yeah. And with that being said, we can move on to chapter 9, which, of course, is perfect because, you're talking about running Cypher shorts. You're going to need creatures and NPCs. And this section is, I think, I really dig this section because it brings some classic monsters that you don't see, like Anthony was saying earlier, that you don't even see on a regular basis. I mean, the first creature that they give you stats and everything for is the blob, which is awesome. And the concept behind it, the way it's set up, you know, it's its own unique blob. It's not the same one that was in the movies, but it's close. Gives you enough information that you could tweak it and make it something else. I mean, I was just thinking about it, like instead of like what I would have, it says it's got an acid gout, and I was thinking more, let's flip it on its ear, instead of it being acid, maybe it's like liquid nitrogen. So when it hits you, it's cold damage, and it's freezing your portions of your body so it can easily break it down, just whatever. But it's really cool that it's there, for you to work with, and all of these creatures get like a full page, if not more. Some great artwork on a lot of them as
I
well.
know I know one of the complaints I've always hear from people on the server that uh which is a kind of a legitimate complaint, that they like to reuse monsters and rehash in multiple books. But I can honestly say that I'm not gonna lie and say that there isn't any reused monsters, but off the top of my head, I think I could only think of two. I could be wrong, but I think most of these are original to this book, for the exception of the Reanimated, which is the zombie, and the two NPCs, the mad scientist and the cannibal. But everything else I think is kind of original. But I could be wrong. Is the fundamental no fundamental is yeah the fundamental angel might be a reprint as well.
But from where, I'd have to go back over my books to figure that one out.
Yeah, but I
But the
think I
fundament, but the reality is this: like overall, it's some new monsters and it's some new inspiration there.
yep.
You know, that's what I'm looking at.
No, the reason why I was saying this because I know sometimes people complain about that, and I'm just stating that it's not the case with this book. Most of these monsters, I would say 80% of it is totally original.
Nice.
And then, of course, they give you a couple of NPCs. And the ciphers are all original. And there's quite a few ciphers on here.
So what do we got? So you're talking about ciphers. So are we talking about the next chapter, Anthony?
Yes, I'm sorry, I moved on.
All right.
Moved on. Oh, hold on. Before we move, what's your favorite monster in this section?
I think I'm really digging the blob. I mean, the blob is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think I want to, let that loose on a group.
Let's see these. Oh, my favorite, hands down, is the hive mind child.
Of course, we knew you would go with that.
I'm creepy children guy. I always manage to throw in a creepy child somewhere in there. And this is the village of the damned.
Well,
I might be dating myself. D knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
He's older than me, but children that all think alike, and it's just creepy. Children creep me out, which is weird because I got 3 kids. So I live in fear all the time.
You're talking about creepy children. There's a movie from I believe it was 1979, 1978 called The Brood.
Yeah, I remember
and that was a creepy child movie because literally all they did was had 2 kids walking around in snowsuits and put a little makeup on them, to make them look creepy, but it was like terrifying, when you thought about it. These 2 kids walking around in snowsuits, but they were like, savage little beasts.
All right, so now we can move on to ciphers.
All right, Anthony. So you were talking about the ciphers being original. Why don't you expand upon your thought process there?
All right, let me give you a total cipher count. That's 10, 20, 40 original ciphers. Oh no, I'm sorry. They broke it down into genres. There's way more. There's about 100 original ciphers in here. They break it down into each genre. So they have ciphers for alien style campaign. They have ciphers for body horror style games. They have ciphers for classic monster style games, which is going to work for my one shot that's going to be coming up soon because I'm doing a classic monster, monster style, dark magic ciphers, demon ciphers, Lovecraftian ciphers, mummy ciphers, science gone wrong ciphers, zombie ciphers. They basically add new original ciphers for each of the genres that they posted earlier.
And what's kind of cool is that Anthony, because he's doing the classic monsters, I threw up there that I'm going to do a World War II style Sergeant Rock and the Creature Commandos. So science gone wrong ciphers are going to be mine.
And you know what's cool about these ciphers is that a lot of them kind of remind me of like objects that we've seen in famous horror movies. I don't know which one it is. It might be an artifact, but I could swear somewhere in this book there was the Hellraiser box. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah. It might be an artifact. I might be jumping the gun.
Maybe. So, let's pick a cipher real quick. Go ahead and roll me
I don't have any dice.
20-sider, Anthony.
Hold on, I'll just use the app. 72.
No, a 20-sider.
Oh, a 20-sider. Hold on a sec. 12.
All right, so 12, and I'm looking at dark magic and occult cipher, so mind swapper. So let's go to the mind swapper real quick. And the mind swapper, an amulet or a device, that's the form it takes. It's a 1d6+2 cipher. And, it says the user attempts to swap minds with a creature within short range that is no larger than a human. The target gets to make an intellect defense roll to resist. If the swap is successful, the user gains control of the creature's body and vice versa.
All right. So now let's incorporate that once again into our Banshee story. That's something that's found in
the ink pen, it's an old fountain pen, and anyone who writes with that ink, because the ink is infused with the banshee's blood, the
Oh,
banshee can actually take control of their body, and then you get stuck in the ghost-like baleful state of the banshee for however long it says it takes.
oh, you know what? I even thought of a cool way to give out the ciphers. Remember how we said stuff are disappearing?
Yeah,
Stuff disappears and ciphers are put in its place.
weird. Yeah, things
So,
that shouldn't be there.
let's say that the person that gets this ink pen and ink jar, all his family photo albums disappeared, and in his place he found this ink jar.
Sounds perfect. See.
Mm. Oh, cool.
And we didn't even know we were going to build an adventure tonight. This was not the
Yeah.
plan. So,
Yeah.
and so we just went over, a quick cipher, incorporated that into our story, which worked, dark magic, stuff like that. Um, Now, we're going to move on to artifacts.
Oh yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of crazy because, they have like
They
the
have,
Necronomicon. They
yeah,
have
the
they have
curse video.
the
Remember
the we have video,
that's
uh
from what's that
the
horror
ring,
movie?
the
Yeah,
ring.
the ring. Yeah,
You know,
they call the Necronomicon the demon puzzle, but it's essentially similar to the box from Hellraiser.
yeah, then they had the Egyptian book, which could basically be the Book of the Dead from a mummy movie. The Book of Thoth, that's what they call it. A bundle
The
of Egyptian scrolls.
the human suit made me think of Men in Black.
Yeah, yeah. What else they got here? Necronomicon.
Yeah, that
Oh,
the
well, of
Book of
course.
the Dead. I'm surprised they didn't have the Book of the Dead in any of the other Cipher System books.
Of course, Spirit Board, a Ouija
So
board,
yeah,
any of the Ouija movies.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I could use pretty much any of these artifacts,
oh, absolutely.
and the artwork on the Spirit Board looks awesome, by the way.
Oh, let me take a look at that.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's a little bit messed up. Oh, man. So,
yeah. The artifacts are really well done, dude.
right, and it's just enough. Again, I'm happy that it's just enough things that you can either take them, modify them as you see fit, or get inspired to create something else.
And once again, pretty much all these artifacts, they don't need to be in a horror game. I could
No.
easily see any of these artifacts in Numenera, The Strange, any of the settings, really.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, just looking at this, like when you said something about the human suit, it just kind of made me think about, you know, you know, uh invasion of the body snatchers. So we need to have a pod somewhere. That could be another artifact that you throw in the game. This pod, maybe just one, and every time they take somebody to it, it creates another one of them. A doppelganger.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Let's move on. I think that's the end of chapter 1.
Yep. And we get to move on to chapter 2, the mini setting.
Yeah, Masters of the Night. Sorry, I was waiting to do that. I know I'm a cornball.
So, yeah, you are, but it's okay. Kick my butt. So, Masters of the Night. What can I say about it? I think it's a pretty tight setting, and I love Sean's take on vampires. As he said, he didn't want to recreate the vampires from World of Darkness, or, you know, you know, vampires in a can. Um, and I think they came up with a pretty unique way to build this setting out, and it's very inspirational for moving forward into a full-on campaign if you wanted to, or at least uh, a multi-session game.
I mean, I'll be honest. When I first heard that the genre for the setting was going to be vampires, I was a little disappointed You know, I think it was kind of overdone. You know, vampire, especially in RPG form, Vampire the Masquerade. You know, there's a ton of different RPGs that deal with the inner workings of vampire societies and the families and all that. But I'm pleasantly surprised that he didn't take that route, and it's a little darker than most vampire settings. You actually, if you're not willing to kill and drink blood, I don't want to give up the entire setting, then this might not be the setting for you. Is the best way of saying it. So I really enjoyed his take on Sean's take on vampires.
What I
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just saying what I dug about it was that you're a vampire. You're bad. You're
Yeah.
meant to be bad. So, and the way it's set up is you have to be bad in order to play the adventure. You know, I mean, inventive players could turn it on its ear, but overall, you're bad boys and girls.
All right, so we'll break down, without going fully into the setting, because he doesn't go too in depth with the setting, but he gives you just enough to get the game started. Like with most setting books, I appreciate that they give you maybe about 5 to 10 pages of lore, but they don't go too in depth, so it allows the GM to really, open the world to his liking and design it to the GM's taste, which I really appreciate. I know some others don't, but that's my personal preference, and my GMing style. I just want you to give me a shell and let me fill in all the, diddly bits into the story that I want to. So I appreciate that. He also gives you, like most of the other setting books, he gives you a list of foci and descriptors that work best with the setting. And he explains how they can be incorporated into the game, which is very helpful, especially for newer players, or for players in general that want to craft their characters.
Yeah,
I'll pick one at random. Throws with deadly accuracy. He explains why that makes sense for a vampire and how you could role play it as a vampire using that focus, which is it's really cool.
right. And for me, I think I really dug the way it is broken down, and there is a arc to the story. There's a beginning, there's a crescendo in the middle, and then there's an ending. Um, the fact that, like Anthony was saying, that it's giving you uh, examples of foci that are appropriate to the vampires, and um, motivations, and it's just really a solid uh, building block. And I've said this 1,000 times. I've been of the mind for a long time, and that's probably one of the reasons why I enjoy Cipher and all of the published games that come from Monte Cook, is because I've been of the mind for a long time that I don't want an entirely fleshed out world. I don't need all of that. As a matter of fact, give me major iconic items, and that's one thing that this place does. It gave us a few places, it gave us some strong characters, it gave us some great NPCs. And these characters and NPCs, I mean, I could actually go in and mine this mini setting, revamp it into something else, but I have all the building blocks I need just based on what Sean gave us. And I think
Um,
that's brilliant.
Another thing, what you just said, he explains how to make vampires, your PCs, feel supernatural, like they're vampires. One, every character rolls up like you would a normal Cypher system character. Adjective, noun, that verbs, but you add vampire to it, and you get blood shifts, which, if anyone plays Cypher system or played Supers or Gods of the Fall, they're essentially power shifts. And you start off with 3 blood shifts, and then you gradually get up to 6, I believe,
So
you
yeah, it's
know,
up to 6.
through leveling, which allows you to make each vampire they can have similar foci, but still be different by the blood shifts they take.
And
He also,
the vampiric
yeah,
traits that you take.
yeah,
Because see, I printed up some of the stuff out of here off the PDF when we first got it, and like
gifts and bloodlines.
right, their blood shifts, their gifts and bloodlines. Um, then the basic vampire idea. So he made vampires kind of a race unto themselves
Yeah,
with
and it
their
gets
own.
added additionally to your character sentence. So
Right.
it's, instead of race as part of your character sentence is someone different.
It would basically be Anthony is a clever vampire adept who who's licensed to carry.
Yeah.
You know,
And a perfect example, this is a discussion that happens all the time on the CU. And this is something that me and Dean have done personally multiple times way before this book came out, is you could give somebody a second focus and it doesn't change the game that much. It actually, if you want to create immortals or powerful creatures, giving someone a second focus, and that's essentially what you call it, what the vampire gifts and bloodlines are. Because they break it down into, you could have a shadow bloodline. And every tier you get to choose a different ability, similar to like how you would do a focus. And it allows each vampire to be unique because they're taking different bloodlines. And it gives you extra abilities to make you feel like a vampire.
right. All the classic tropes are in there, and then some new things too, but it's really, it was really inspirational in that sense. Shameless plug, I do have a product coming out soon for the horror genre. um and it's basically the horror remix, and it's literally a ton of more abilities and stuff like that for you to build, your horror concepts out, like the chosen ones, all the tropes that we've seen, all the classic things, chosen ones or vamp or monster hunters or very knowledgeable people and all of this kind of stuff. So this book really is pretty awesome, in that respect.
It also, like I said, it gives you additional abilities. There's a lot of abilities that are not in the Cipher core book that are vampire related, that are in this book specifically, that you can't find in the Cipher core book. So there's a whole list of, what the activation course is. Like I'll just give you an example: bat wings. So if you want a vampire that, like the Bram Stoker's Dracula at the end scene when his bat wings pop out, you could have that, and it's 4 might points. It's an action. So
Right.
you could essentially have two vampires with the same exact sentence, but since they have different bloodlines, they can be entirely different style played characters, which is
Exactly.
absolutely phenomenal.
you know um the other thing about this particular mini setting is also the way it's broken down. It's broken down into, different sections, so there's the section of when you first become a vampire. um you know Takes you through that. Then there's a section, now you're established yourself, and you start to see a bigger picture, what's going on. And then of course there's the climactic ending, and it can go, many different ways depending on how you handle it. So you as the PCs are, have much agency in that story and the way things go. But you as a GM also have, um, a really big, question to ask yourself. Do you want this to end? Is it Masters of Night it? Is that it? Or do you want to continue this world on? So it's really a smartly done book overall.
Also, with all the extra added abilities, you you have to take vampire weaknesses as well, which adds another layer of narrative element to your story and to your character, makes it more interesting and unique. And you could be, and everyone could take different weaknesses. So one person can have a vampire that's weak to holy water, when another one has a, will have a weakness to silver, or running water, or
Or
have to sleep,
mirrors.
or
Or
yeah,
mirrors.
have to sleep in a coffin. All this adds, interesting character, um, adds character traits that makes every character special in its own way. And you can take multiple weaknesses. That's one good thing about vampires is vampires are all powerful, but they do have some major drawbacks. And this, also makes your character unique. And it's cool that everyone doesn't have the same one. Even though me personally, I think if I was running this game, I would force sunlight on everyone.
Well, I would do it to a degree, depending on
Yeah.
how it is.
I wasn't a Twilight fan with the twinkling star
Well,
vampire.
no, I've never been a fan of the twinkly star vampire. But you know what? Even in some of the other lore, vampires made it out into the daylight.
Mm,
With the instead of things. I mean, even Blade, they did it before the twinkly vampires.
yeah,
They had them using sunscreen and stuff like that. They were
yeah.
covered. Um, what was that other movie?
Near dark. They used to
Near Dark.
travel.
That's what I
Yeah,
was about. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Near Dark was awesome.
yeah. They used to travel in the van with aluminum foil around everything.
Yep. You
Yeah,
know. So I mean, there's just ways to get around certain aspects.
and and of course they have rules for creating new vampires. They have rules for if a vampire bites another vampire. You know, and then this is just chock full of stuff. The blood sacrifice, changing blood shifts. They have rules on how to feed on blood.
Yeah. What
What
happens if you don't feed?
what's the benefits between human blood and animal blood for those that want lore and want rules? It's definitely in here for you.
Yeah. There's enough in there that what you can build on it, and I think that's again like I said before. Um, and I think it just might be the difference of when you started gaming, the era you come from. Because I know myself, I come from that era where we did have to make a lot of things. I mean, there were modules and stuff out there, but there was no, Faerun. There was Castle Greyhawk. But
Oh, and just for the weaknesses are called aversions, and you have to roll 3 times on the aversion table. So you have to take 3 of these weaknesses.
which is cool.
Yeah, and makes sense.
Right. Now that's awesome, Anthony. Um, 3 aversions. Again, giving that unique flavor to each vampire. And I think that's going to be a really big saving grace as well because you know it gives a little uniqueness, like we were saying, to everybody at the table.
Yeah, it's I'm really interested in possibly running 1 or 2 sessions of this setting to see what it feels like to have a group of people playing vampires, and like we could actually do the murder hobo game and it be okay.
Yeah, actually,
you
actually,
know,
it's encouraged.
yeah.
Well,
you
it
know,
really depends on how bad the group of vampires we're playing would want to be. If they embrace the savagery of being a blood sucking fiend of the night.
yeah. I mean, this whole section is just chock full of different aspects of being a vampire and ways of playing it, like the daily life of a vampire. The list goes on and on. You know, like all vampires is secret, other supernatural secrets. It opens the door for lycanthropes. It opens the door for, all sorts of other monsters into your game setting. There's a section on vampires in other time periods, which would be very interesting to do. I loved that what was the Abraham Lincoln vampire movie?
Oh yeah,
I actually
Abraham
read
Lincoln
that
versus the
book.
vampires.
Yeah, the whole Civil War with vampires would be an interesting, playground to mess around in.
Well,
You know,
that's it's been done a few times with the whole Western vampire thing, which
yeah.
I kind of dug. The one with Wesley Snipes called Gallows,
Mhm.
which was kind of interesting. That
And
was
he actually has a whole bunch of he talks about fantasy setting with vampires, historical setting with vampires, you know, a post-apocalyptic setting with vampires. This just is a ton of things. And there's something really cool as well. He has a whole section on vampire slang,
Yep,
which is
that's really
really cool. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of like terminology that the players can read and add them into the storyline. I actually really like that. Next time I do an original setting, we got to add a slang list. That's
cool.
actually pretty cool.
Absolutely. So yeah, post-apocalyptic. That's the Omega Man or
Yeah.
I Am Legend.
Mhm. What's
It's
that? Vampires from Mars?
yeah, yeah.
That Ice Cube movie? That wasn't that good.
It wasn't, but hey, it was a movie.
Yeah, it was a movie. That's the best way of describing it. Yeah,
Look,
this is
we
totally
can't say all
awesome.
horror is good horror. We
Yeah.
can't say there's just a lot of it.
And then, of course, it deals with vampire gangs, and it gives you, once again, it breaks down a whole bunch of sample gangs that you could choose to either use or not use in your games, you know, and the names of the gangs. The list goes on and on. There's a ton of things in there.
Yeah, I kind of dig. I just dig it as a whole. Like I said, this book by far has moved up the list to possibly my favorite book of the setting books. Even though I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for God Forsaken and Tallus together. Tolus, excuse me, I
Yeah.
pronounced it wrong. But yeah.
It also it has an original adventure in here as well
Oh
for
yeah.
this setting in particular. What's this adventure called? The Last Sunrise.
Well, there's like
I,
a few different parts of it.
yeah, I didn't read this adventure, so I can't really speak on it much.
I read the adventure. Like I said, I read the book cover to cover. The adventure is awesome. I really dig it. Um, oh, we were almost forgot something, Anthony. The secret cards, the new
Oh
cards
yeah,
with the which I kind of dig. They're nice little cards that you can give out, to your players, or whatever, like the secret twist card, which is awesome. They've got so many different little nuances, So the one card says, "Don't let anyone see this card. Your doppelganger has switched places with you, and you are now playing the doppelganger who is pretending to be your original character." You
that's
know,
awesome.
or don't let anyone see this card. You realize that the other PCs are the real villains, and now they're trying to secretly help. Now you're secretly trying to help stop them. You can use this card as a free level of effort on one task when you hand it to the GM. These cards are great, so they give you kind of GM intrusions without them being a typical GM intrusion. They kind of switch the narrative. They can allow you as the GM, and it's kind of cool. They're blank and they can be just printed up on regular paper and laminated, or you can print them up on something heavier. It's just options. Once again, love options.
Yeah, it adds a new element to your gameplay. You can choose to use them or not use them. You don't have to use the cards for stay alive. Once again, you can use the cards or write your own cards, the concept of the cards for other games as well. We've actually used something similar in several of our games, and I'm happy that they started to incorporate new ideas into these setting books.
It's great stuff, man.
Yeah.
And these cards, like I printed them up too, because like I said, I've used them. They not anything major or huge. It's pretty cool, and they just add another element to your game as you're sitting at the table and running things.
Yo, just to go back to this adventure, this thing is freaking long, dude.
Well, it's more or less a mini campaign.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It has several parts to it. It has several working parts. It opens up with you with your becoming a vampire and dealing with, like I said, it's awesome because you deal with yourself just becoming a vampire, and information is being put in your lap, and it's how you're going to deal with that portion. Coming to grips with the fact that you are a villain, Then the second act is, more or less you kind of getting into the rhythm and the groove of where you're at. Then there's a third act where you have a confrontation and questions get answered and things of that nature. And then finally, of course, there's that final part, which is, you know, the big bad is revealed. The reason why, kind of part why it's called Stay Alive, you know, because you as the vampires have something to worry about. There's something out there that even the vampires can be afraid of.
Oh, I think
Um,
I got something to read after we shoot this video.
yeah, and it's really, really good in that respect, you know. Um, and if you have nothing else, then I'm just gonna move on to the next thing in the book.
Yep. Just one quick thing. If anybody on the CU wants to run us through this adventure or wants us to run them through this adventure, please put a comment down in the comment section down below in this video. We could definitely arrange for it to happen either way.
Right. Um, the next sections of the book are basically simple handouts. Of course, there's a horror game consent checklist. So the consent and gaming checklist is right there for you. Um, there is a vampire worksheet, basically. So where you put your blood shifts at, what your vampire aversion and quirks are, and basic vampire abilities. And then of course there's an index, which is also hyperlinked if you're using a PDF. This book is chock full of tools, and it's very well laid out. And I think anybody who likes horror, anybody who likes MCG games, anybody who likes just tools in general, this book is for you.
So the big question is, now that we've done the entire walkthrough, would you recommend this book for not only MCG players but for non-MCG players alike?
Absolutely. I think it like here's the thing that Monte Cook Games said about this series of books that was coming out. They said that they weren't necessarily settings, they were toolkits as well. They didn't lie. Stars Are Fire, same thing, chock full of options and ways to approach things. Stay Alive. I call it a masterpiece. It's a brilliant piece of work. I enjoy it. Like I said, it's at this point in time, it's arguably my favorite book. You know,
Yeah, I'm gonna say that absolutely as well. Not only is this my favorite setting book, because it's no secret that the horror genre is my favorite, like playground to run games in. This book was beautifully done, and it's made, with the inclusion of this and Stars of Fire, it's made me super excited for God's Forsaken and We're All Mad Here, because if those two books are anything like the Bruce's and Sean's books, I have no doubt in my mind they're going to be classic RPG books. So I'm excited for those as well now. And not that I wasn't, but now I'm even more so. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to what the rest of the Best Game Ever Kickstarter and the new Cipher System revised book Kickstarter has in store for us. So I
absolutely.
absolutely would recommend Stay Alive and Stars of Fire for that matter. We never did a review of Stars of Fire, but I'm assuming within 2 weeks we should be doing a review of that book as well.
Awesome. And so, if you have nothing else, Anthony, I'm gonna speak out there to the world and say thank you for coming and enjoying our video with us today. Um, take the time to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell for us, and let us know,
I have,
comments.
when you're done, I have one last thing. Next week we have two very special guests appearing on the show live at Twitch next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. What is that? Yeah, 10
7
p.m.
o'clock Pacific.
7 o'clock Pacific. We have Charles and Tammy Ryan of Monte Cook Games. Hopefully they could give us some like behind the scenes sneak peek of what's going on with Tolis, and we'll have a better grasp of what all the stretch goals are with that. Also, let us know when's the release date of We All Mad Here by Shauna Jermaine, and some other really cool tidbits of the inner workings of MCG. For those that don't know, Charles Ryan is the COO of Monte Cook Games, and Tammy, his wife, is the administrative director. So it's going to be they're going to be able to give us some really cool perspective of the inner workings of Monte Cook Games. So I'm excited for that, and I'm excited. Now we know them personally; they're both great people. I'm excited to have them live on Twitch. So just be on the lookout for that. And like any of our other Twitch streams, you're more than welcome to join us, chat with us in chat, or ask Charles and Tammy questions if you like.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I get to give our sign off. For us here at the CU, we will see you later.
Bye, guys.